We hear a lot these days about the need to avoid processed foods as much as possible. That's something our Fresh Living chef Sara Snow very much agrees with, even with regard to mac and cheese, which so many of us love. So Sarah's here today to show us how to, in her words, break out of the box and make homemade macaroni.
I'm going to show you real food, real simple, homemade macaroni. The first thing we need is 3 tablespoons of butter. We're just going to let that melt. Okay, once my butter has melted a little bit, I'm adding to it 3 tablespoons of flour. And I really want to whisk this in. I used a whole wheat flour, which is why it's got a slightly brown tinge to it. Okay, now I'm going to add to that 2 cups of milk in a nice steady stream, continuing to whisk, and I'll bring that to just a slight boil, more like a simmer, before I add in my seasonings and my cheese. I'm going to cover this for just a minute so that it can come to a nice light boil. Now in the meantime, I have cooked 1.5 cups of macaroni noodles. Cook it according to the package directions, but you want it to be still slightly firm, definitely not mushy, because remember, this macaroni and cheese is still going to go into the oven and cook for a little bit longer. After your macaroni has cooked, rinse it in some cold water to stop the cooking process, and then simply set it aside. The process of making macaroni from scratch takes about 10 minutes. While your pasta cooks, you cook your sauce. All right, my milk, butter, and flour mixture is starting to heat up really nicely. I've got it to just a light simmer, definitely not a boil. And you wanna make sure you whisk it frequently so it doesn't have a chance to burn. I'm gonna add some seasonings into this. A teaspoon of dried mustard. I'll also add 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and just a dash of pepper. Turning my burner down a bit because I want to keep this at a simmer, keep it nice and hot, keep it cooking definitely, but I don't want it to burn. Now we're adding in 1.5 cups of cheddar cheese. This is a finely grated cheddar cheese. Just pour that in, and 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. My cheese sauce is taking on a slightly tan color, but that's because I used a whole wheat flour. If that bothers you for any reason, go ahead with a white bleached flour. But I, of course, want to make everything a little bit healthier, so I'm going with a whole wheat flour. So my sauce is finished. I'm going to add to it my already cooked pasta, slightly al dente. I'll stir that all together here. Now, one nice thing about this recipe is it's easily doubled or even tripled. This is a recipe that I make a lot of times for friends who have just had babies, anyone who needs comfort food. You can, of course, make it with all organic ingredients, so it's a very healthy dish, albeit somewhat rich and definitely in the comfort food category. Now this is all mixed together. I'm going to set that aside and bring my baking dish over. So I'm adding my macaroni mixture, I'm just pouring it into my baking dish. Now, to top it off in a slightly different way and to make it a little bit more refreshed, I like to add a little bit of vegetable. So I'm taking a couple small tomatoes, I'm just going to slice them paper thin and layer them across the top. And the final step is to take 1 cup of breadcrumbs and mix in 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. I sprinkle my breadcrumbs mixture right over the top of the macaroni. I'm putting the majority of it on first, and then I'm going to top it with the tomatoes and put the last little bit over top of the tomatoes. Standard store-bought macaroni, boxed macaroni, is creamy and lovely, but it's all that one consistency. This gives it a little bit of crunch, and then the tomatoes give it a little bit of brightness. Okay, with my tomatoes over the top, I sprinkled the last little bit of those breadcrumbs right over top of that. This entire thing took 10, maybe max 20 minutes to assemble, and that was with gathering the ingredients. This is going to go into the 350-degree oven, 30 minutes in the oven, and this dish is ready to come out. Look at that, all that oozy, bubbly yumminess around the edges there. So much better than boxed macaroni and cheese, don't you agree? This is a macaroni and cheese recipe that anyone in your family will love.
The link to Sara's recipe and much more about her fresh living approach is on our website, healingquest.tv.